If a standard private business goes 800% over budget and delays its product delivery by an entire decade, it dies. Its investors panic, the stock collapses, executives are fired, and the company files for bankruptcy. But in the ultra-secret world of United States defense contracting, blowing past your budget isn't a tragic management failure at all. In fact, it is the single most profitable business strategy ever invented. When the American government hired a massive corporation to build a next-generation weapons system, the initial estimated price tag was $40 billion. Fast forward a few years later. The project was years behind schedule, the tech barely worked, and the total cost skyrocketed past $200 billion. In any normal industry, that company would be sued into oblivion. But instead, the CEO received a multi-million-dollar bonus, the company's stock hit an all-time high, and Wall Street rewarded them with billions in fresh investment. How is that even possible? How can a corporation get financially rewarded for being late, incompetent, and wildly inefficient? The answer lies in a hidden financial structure that almost nobody outside of Washington understands. A business mechanism known as the cost-plus contract. And over the next few minutes, we are going to break down how this single accounting trick turns taxpayer money into a guaranteed, multi-billion-dollar money printer. To understand this surreal system, you first have to unlearn everything you know about traditional capitalism. In a normal market, companies spend their own money to build a product. If a laptop maker spends $100 million designing a new computer, but consumers refuse to buy it, the company takes a devastating financial loss. They take all the risk. In the world of defense contracting, however, that risk is completely reversed. Under a standard cost-plus contract, the government agrees to pay the defense firm for every single expense incurred during research, development, and manufacturing, plus a guaranteed profit fee on top of those costs. Let that sink in for a moment. If a defense titan agrees to build a new satellite system for an estimated $1 billion, and the government guarantees them a 7% profit fee, the company earns $70 million in pure profit. That sounds simple enough, right? But here is where the story gets insane. Suppose the engineering team makes massive mistakes, or the supply chain breaks down, or the design turns out to be ridiculously overcomplicated. The development cost instantly doubles from $1 billion to $2 billion. In the real world, the company would go broke fixing its own mistakes, but under a cost-plus contract, that 7% profit margin is applied to the new, higher cost. That means the contractor's profit doesn't shrink. It doubles from $70 million to $140 million. The company literally makes more profit by being slow, clumsy, and inefficient. This brings us to a terrifying question. If blowing the budget makes defense companies vastly richer, what is stopping them from making every single military project go over budget on purpose? Well, to answer that, we have to look at a brilliant real-world case study, the legendary story of the F-35 fighter jet. Back in the late 90s, the Pentagon wanted a single, universal jet that could replace multiple aircraft across the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. The pitch was simple: build one versatile jet to save taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. The contract was awarded and the engineering began, but almost immediately, the company realized something fundamental about the cost-plus business model. The more complex you make the technology, the more engineering changes are required. The more engineering changes you require, the longer the timeline stretches, and the longer the timeline stretches, the more billions flow directly into the corporate bank account. Feature after feature was added. The software grew to millions of lines of complex code. Mechanical errors delayed testing by years. Costs exploded from an initial estimate of $200 billion to over $400 billion just for development and production. Yet, Congress didn't cancel the project. They couldn't. Why? Because the defense contractor had executed the ultimate business strategy, a political move known as industrial subcontracting distribution. Before a single bolt was tightened on that jet, the primary contractor deliberately split up the manufacturing process into thousands of tiny parts. Then, they distributed those subcontracts across 450 separate congressional districts. Think about the genius of that move. Every single time a politician in Washington threatened to cut funding for the failing jet, the defense company pointed straight at the politician's voters and said, "If you cancel this project, 3,000 high-paying engineering jobs in your home district vanish tomorrow morning." It was a total checkmate. The jet was intentionally engineered to be politically indestructible. By distributing the supply chain across the entire country, the defense firm turned American politicians into their own personal sales force. Congress wasn't just buying a weapon. They were forced to protect a massive jobs program in their own backyards. And that leads us to the second hidden revenue engine, a secret mechanism that makes the initial sale look like pocket change. When most people see a defense company land a $50 billion contract to manufacture hardware, they assume that's where the profit ends. But in reality, manufacturing the hardware is just the entry ticket. Insiders call this secret revenue strategy the lifetime sustainment trap. When a defense titan sells a jet, a tank, or a naval vessel to the military, the upfront purchase price accounts for only 20 to 30% of the total revenue that machine will ever generate. The remaining 70 to 80% of the money comes from maintaining, repairing, and upgrading that equipment over its 30 to 50-year lifetime. Once the military buys a weapons system, they are completely locked in. Independent mechanics cannot buy the parts. Outside software engineers don't have the diagnostic access. The contractor holds the exclusive patents, the proprietary blueprints, and the software keys. The military essentially signs a 50-year, non-cancelable subscription service, where the contractor can set the price for spare parts and system updates almost completely on their own terms. A single replacement circuit board that would cost $50 in the commercial tech world can cost the Pentagon thousands of dollars, simply because the defense contractor is the only legal supplier on Earth allowed to sell it. It is the exact same strategy printer companies use when they sell you a printer for $50, and then charge you $50 for every single ink cartridge for the next 5 years. Except in this case, the ink cartridges cost millions of dollars each, and the customer is paying with taxpayer money. So, if these companies have built an empire where development risk is subsidized, profit is guaranteed, and maintenance creates a multi-decade monopoly. Why don't traditional tech giants like Apple, Google, or Tesla jump in and take this money for themselves? Because the defense giants have constructed a massive barrier to entry, a shield so thick that even Silicon Valley struggles to pierce it. That shield is built on 3 unbreakable pillars: security clearances, regulatory bureaucracy, and the revolving door. Every year, hundreds of high-ranking military generals, Pentagon procurement officers, and government officials retire from public service. And where do they go next? They step straight out of the government and walk right onto the executive boards of the exact defense contractors they were previously regulating. These former generals know every corridor in the Pentagon. They know every secret budget line item. They know the exact military officers making purchasing decisions. When a fresh tech startup tries to pitch a cheaper, faster, and better solution to the government, they get buried in thousands of pages of procurement regulations. But when an established defense titan pitches a project, their executives can simply pick up the phone and call their former colleagues. It is an elite, closed-loop network where the buyers and the sellers are literally the same group of people, swapping positions back and forth for decades. When you combine cost-plus contracts, political job shielding, lifetime maintenance monopolies, and the revolving door, you get a business model that is almost completely immune to normal economic reality. During economic booms, defense budgets go up. During economic recessions, defense spending remains steady. During global conflicts, defense stocks skyrocket, while normal companies spend millions stressing over consumer trends, advertising campaigns, and market crashes. Defense titans enjoy a guaranteed, predictable cash flow that stretches out for decades. They use those predictable profits to pay reliable dividends, buy back billions of dollars of their own stock, and keep their share prices climbing perpetually upward. But right now, as we speak, this bulletproof financial empire is suddenly facing its biggest threat in over half a century. A major shift is happening in Washington. Frustrated by decades of budget overruns, government auditors are finally attempting to outlaw traditional cost-plus contracts, forcing defense firms to accept fixed-price contracts instead. Under a fixed-price contract, if a company estimates a project will cost $1 billion and it goes over budget by $500 million, the company has to pay that extra $500 million directly out of its own corporate pocket. When defense giants were recently forced into fixed-price deals for advanced military hardware, unexpected engineering problems struck, and for the first time in history, those companies were hit with billions of dollars in real, direct losses at the exact same time. Software and artificial intelligence are completely rewriting the rules of modern warfare. The future of defense is no longer about building bigger, more expensive hardware platforms that take 20 years to design. It is about autonomous drone swarms, hypersonic algorithms, and real-time data networks built by agile, venture-backed tech startups. These new tech entrants aren't building billion-dollar hardware. They are building cheap, AI-driven software systems in months rather than decades. And they are challenging the old guard defense titans at their own game. The old giants are now scrambling to adapt, rushing to transform themselves from heavy manufacturing companies into agile, software-first tech firms before their traditional business model falls apart. So, the next time you hear about a military project going billions of dollars over budget and taking years longer than planned, don't assume it's just government incompetence or corporate failure.